Hey gang, what's up? It's Chris here. I'll be lending my voice to this video today. Bulldozer Man was going to voice this himself, but he got ill right before recording began, so I have to stand in for him. Also, this video is going to contain a lot of vulgar language. And while it won't be Bulldozer Man screaming it at you, and he did hurt his voice when he tried to record the first part of this video, it may be too much for some viewers to handle, and we won't be pulling any punches or censoring anything, so, Okay, start the show. Over the years, many video games have evolved and changed. Some changed for the best, like Toontown and Minecraft, and some not so much, like Wizard 101 and especially Genshin Impact. Seriously, fuck this game. No joke, no cap, no exaggeration. This game can just go screw itself. What was once the holy grail of gacha games is now nothing but a shadow of its former self. So much so, many wonder if it was ever any good to begin with. I firmly believe that it began with good intentions, and definitely a strong start at the beginning of its life. But now, in 2025, this game just feels bland. Like, how did this game ever get so popular, bland? And yet, there still seems to be people who think this game is the greatest thing ever made. I'm sorry guys, but if you think this game is anything good, you're living in a bubble. And not the good kind. I'm warning you right now, this is going to be a huge video. I'm not leaving any stone unturned. I really need to explain why I feel this game should be a part of the Video Game Hall of Shame. Right up there with such classics as Wizard 101 and Age of Conan Unchained. I didn't want to hate this game. I wanted to like it and enjoy it for the rest of its life because I knew a lot of you loved it. And have loved it since launch. I have no ill will towards the creators who brought this game to life. But still, I had to watch this game suffer. It was soul-crushing, and people seem to love watching me be angry. You bastards. So it's time. It's time to take apart Genshin Impact at the seams and explain why I feel it's such a train wreck. But now I hear you say, but Bulldozer, surely this game isn't totally awful. There's a lot of things here that are positive. Well, you're right. Genshin Impact is, I'd say, 90% terrible. But I guess before I offend anyone too much, I should give that last 10% some proper attention. And so, here are the positives of Genshin Impact. Bear in mind, I may find more later in the video, so I'm just getting these out of the way now. If I have to praise Genshin Impact for one thing, I gotta recommend the amazing soundtrack. MMORPGs and gacha games usually have some banging music in there, and this game was no exception. I mean, it wasn't all A+ stuff. I couldn't tell you what Fontaine sounds like by memory, and some of the boss themes are pretty forgettable. But there's still a lot of hits in here. And at least when I was suffering through this amazingly bland game, I was bobbing my head to the music the whole way through. And the best part about the soundtrack? You don't even need to download the game in order to hear it. Seriously, just listen to it on Spotify or YouTube. It's much better than trying to listen to it in-game. Well done, guys, well done. Well, I guess one more thing I can praise is the Serenity Teapot, for letting you build your own custom player home. I like that system. It's a fun break from all the chaos in this game. This game has barely any, so yeah, it kind of stands out. Yeah, that's all I got. If I think of any more positives to bring up during the duration of this video, I'll be sure to bring them up. I'll mention this game's strong points whenever I can. It's already striking out big time with me. Alright, positives over. So I first caught wind of Genshin Impact sometime in 2021, maybe around the middle of the year. I was still on Twitch at the time and hadn't yet been ditched by the site, so I had a lot of awesome live streamers that I was watching. Minecraft, Toontown, Wizard 101, Torum Online. I was watching streams for all these games. And then one day I logged in and saw one of them streaming Genshin Impact. I asked about the game, as I'd never experienced a true gacha game before then. And I won't lie, the game had my attention. But it just wasn't hitting any of the right spots. So after a while, I ultimately passed on it. It wasn't until a year or so later that the game came to my attention again on YouTube. The game was all over the place at this point, so it wasn't hard to find YouTube videos talking about it. And I decided that it was finally time to see what this game was all about. A close personal friend of mine at the time, someone I'm sure you know, had a tablet that was capable of playing the game. And I asked him if I could borrow it, since my smartphone and computer were both too weak to run Genshin. He was going away on a month-long holiday, so he agreed. Little did I know, this was going to be one of the most frustrating experiences I've ever had with a video game. Ugh, even the icon for the game pisses me off. Nah, I'm just kidding. But seriously, just look at Paimon's smug-ass smile just staring at you the moment you tap on the game's Google Play page. It's like she knows. You're about to play a fucking terrible gacha game, and I'm going to enjoy this. So fire me up, you stupid fucking idiot! And so it begins. Genshin Impact. I swear, where did everything go so wrong with this game? The very first time I saw this title screen, it had me sitting there in genuine awe and wonder, curious as to what this game was going to be and how it was going to play. If I knew then how miserable of a time I was going to have, I would have been singing a much different tune at the time. Well, while we wait for the game to install, let's talk about my first major knock against the game. The file size. My fucking god, this game's file size is kryptonite. I know people joke around about the actual file size of this thing, but seriously, look it up on Google. 70 to 140 gigabytes of data? Really? And because this game re-downloads all of its required data every time it updates, then deletes the old data when it's done. It may end up taking up twice that space when it updates. Why? Why was this necessary? No other online game I've played, not even Hoyo's other hit online game, Honkai Star Rail, does this. They only update the required files for the specific update, not the entire damn game all at once. It still blows my mind to this day. What were they thinking? But I guess that's what happens when you try to cram Breath of the Wild onto a tiny little device that can't handle a game of that scope. I'm glad Hoyo's future games went for a different approach that lightens up the file size a bit. Oh, and before anyone brings it up, yes, I am aware that the cloud version of the game is a thing, which does lighten up on the file size a great deal, but that only allows you to play for up to 10 hours before needing to pay to continue. So it's pretty much if Genshin Impact had a Wizard 101-styled paywall. Yeah, no thanks. I'll pass. Alright, so the game begins proper, and we have to choose a twin to play as. We can play as either the boy, Ether, or the girl, Lumine, and apart from a few minor cosmetic differences, they both play pretty much the same, so really just choose whoever you want. Anyway, we pick our twin. The other twin gets captured by the Legend of Zelda. Twilight Princess, Twilight Squares of Darkness. Okay. And then we black out. Anyway, sometime later we see our main character sitting on a coastline with their one and only friend for the last couple of months, Paimon. Ooh boy, here we go. People have opinions about Paimon. People have a lot of opinions about Paimon. And I'm no exception. But we'll talk about that later. We got a story to summarize. So anyway, we just decide, out of the blue, that we're going to go find the 7 Archons, or gods, who reside over the lands of this world, known as Teyvat. And right away, I have to question, what was the traveler doing leading up to the start of the game? It's clearly implied that nobody has ever met them before the start of the game. So have we just been stuck here on this coastline for God knows how long? No, we learned that we fished Paimon out of the sea in the Guyun Stone Forest, which is in Liyue, the second country of the game. And that's all the way across Mondstadt from where we start. Ugh, you see what you've done, Hoyo? You've caused us to overthink these things because the lore of your damn game doesn't make any damn sense. Jeez. Anywho, after some walking, we get greeted to our opening shot of Mondstadt in the distance. Anyone else thinking Breath of the Wild right now? Trust me, we'll get there in due time. Anywho, boy meets dragon, we touch a statue and walk some more, and then we meet Amber, our first playable character outside of the Traveler, who, for simplicity's sake, and because of the fact I've already had Elevenlabs tweak out on me twice trying to pronounce the names of the twins, shall be referred to as Goku for the rest of this video. Points if anyone gets the reference, it'll be our little inside joke. Anyway, now I can talk about my second thing in this game that grinds my gears. The Amber hate. My fucking god. If I had $1 for every time I've heard someone say they hate Amber, I'd be a goddamn millionaire by now. Like, I get it, her abilities aren't for everyone. But they give you another archer later in the game to replace Amber if you don't like her. But is that any reason to bash, beat, burn, and overall flat-out abuse Amber to the point where there's art of her wondering to herself if she's, quote, useless? Really? How hard can it be to learn her strengths and weaknesses? Throw out Baron Bunny, retreat and auto-attack, or use charged pyro arrows. Throw her burst out when it's charged up, then switch to another character for a pyro reaction. It's not that hard. Gosh, we're only a few minutes into the video, And we're already at the point in the script where I was yelling into my mic and hurting my voice box. Now you see why I had to resort to Elevenlabs for this one. Oh yeah, one thing I gotta mention right now, before we go any further, it's clearly stated that Goku is here to find his sibling. Well, when we do find her, it turns out she's on the side of the Abyss, the quote-unquote main antagonists of this game. And really, hardly anything comes of that. I mean, yeah, we see her multiple times during the main questline, but every time she just pops in and dips. And by the end of the game, it almost feels like Goku just doesn't care anymore. Like, dude, that's your fucking sister on the line here. Quit dancing around like you just got a victory royale in Fortnite and get back to work finding your sister already. I swear, the story of this game friggin' sucks, and it just gets worse and worse the more I watch it. Anyway, we do some combat things with Amber and head into Mondstadt, where the town is attacked by Shenron. Oop, excuse me, I mean Storm Terror. We fly around to fight it off, in an aerial combat style that's never reused again after this fight. Can anyone tell me why? And then this guy shows up, Kaya. According to popular theories, he's related to pirates, because pirates are cool.
Yo ho, a pirate's life for me.
We go on a scavenger hunt, fight a bunch of hilichurls, do some other stuff, visit a frozen mountain, and eventually fight the dragon again after some more shenanigans that I can't talk about here, because we need to get this video moving already. And that's the setup for Genshin Impact. Sorry for skipping a lot of crucial details in the opening here. I'm really not here to talk about the story of this thing, unless I bring it up as a criticism, since I've already done all of this and don't feel like doing it again. Hell, it was a struggle to not skip every cutscene in this game when I was doing this video. I'm just here to talk about what I think is wrong with this game, and what needs to be improved going forward if it's to have any chance of surviving. And boy oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about here. And right now, I think the actual gacha mechanic itself needs to be addressed. This gacha mechanic is bullshit. Seriously, I know it's been mentioned before, but it needs to be mentioned again. I made 130 pulls on this banner, the same exact standard banner, and did not get the promised 5-star character from Pity. No, I didn't get the character until I made 135 pulls. And even then, it was a dumb weapon that I couldn't use. So I had no 5-star characters, a lot of 4-star characters with no constellation upgrades, and a 5-star weapon that none of them could make good use of. After making over 130 pulls, and that was just the standard banner. I recall making dozens upon dozens of pulls on the event, and character banners too, and being met with the same thing. Do you think that was overkill? What really makes this feel like bullshit to me is the fact that I've done similar things in no less than 3 other gacha games, Reverse 1999, Metria, and yes, even Hoyo's other game, Honkai Star Rail. And in all 3 of those games, the gacha has been much better to me, giving me plenty of 5-star characters, as well as 6-star characters in Reverse's case, and plenty of upgrades for the lower tier characters that made them still viable. And I haven't played any of them nearly as long as I played Genshin. Hell, Honkai Star Rail and Reverse 1999, I'm not even halfway through the main story on those games yet. And Metria, I just started that game. So you'll have to excuse me for thinking that Genshin's gacha is just ass. When I play 3 other gacha games, including one made by the same company, and actually get good pulls from the gacha itself, there's a problem. And spoiler alert, but my luck with the gacha was still ass on the new account I made for this video. Glad to see some things never change. Now, I understand why the gacha is set up like this. Hoyo has to make money, and this is how they make money. They lure you in with all these fancy characters, all this cool stuff, and expect you to pay up to get access to it all. But here's the problem. If people feel like the gacha is cheating them, especially compared to other games out there, then they're not going to dump dozens upon dozens of dollars into the game until they get what they want, either because they can't afford it or they feel like money won't make the problem go away. If they got screwed the first dozen times, then they're not going to be horribly tempted to pay to try again, will they? You might be able to catch a gambling addict that way, but anyone with a functioning brain like myself won't be so easily fooled. Reverse 1999, Honkai Star Rail, those games did manage to get me to pay up, because they threw enough awesome things at me from the gacha that it felt like the gacha was fair and not scummy. Which is not what I can say about Genshin. Reverse, my god, I've had to put half of the 5-star and 6-star characters I got on the bench because I just don't have enough resources to develop everyone. And Honkai has already given me enough 5-star characters as well as highly upgraded 4-star characters to fill in 2 combat teams. So I really don't get why Genshin Impact has to be so stingy, especially if it ends up driving away potentially lifelong paying customers. Unfortunately, the gacha itself isn't the only thing I find brutally unfair in this game. Let's talk about the next hot button topic that often comes up whenever someone mentions this game. The community. Ooh boy, where do I even start? Between the cringe as hell fan art of the characters in compromised situations, to put it very mildly, to their behavior towards this game's critics, to the constant harassment and threats they send to this game's fan artists, and even the English voice actors, all I can do whenever I see this behavior is take a step back and say this.
I don't want to hear another word! You're a disgrace to the game!
You've reached your limit on talking. Shut the fuck up.
I mean, really, what the hell is this? Someone draws one of the characters and gets the skin color just one shade too dark, and the Genshin Impact fanbase explodes in a sea of rage? And how about their harassment of the English voice actors? Hoyo's games have been so badly affected by this. A lot of the newer cutscenes in these games don't have voice acting in the English language, because the English VAs have gone into hiding, quit, or just don't want to deal with that bullshit anymore. And honestly, I think they've gotten it easy compared to the fan artists, some of which have been bullied and sent straight-up death threats. Hoyo, I'm serious here. Your fanbase is getting out of control. You need to rein them in, or they're going to get your company in a mountain of legal trouble. Well, more legal trouble than you're already in, but we'll get there when we get there. And yes, I know this game and Honkai Star Rail were made by the same company, so they technically share a lot of that fanbase. But I feel like the Genshin fans, the ones who favor that game over Honkai, are the biggest offenders here. Even so, a lot of fan artists for Reverse 1999 didn't get the characters' skin tones exactly right, and you don't see that game's fanbase imploding. So I really struggle to understand why Genshin Impact's fans are such this angry, salty bunch of trolls who make the Hilichurls look like gentlemen by comparison. And that's when they aren't taking a tactical nuke to anybody who so much as criticizes this game for any reason, including perfectly valid problems with the game that need to be addressed. So they're pulling a Twitch now, pretending everything is fine and silencing the critics who say otherwise? I honestly can't see the virtue of defending this game, especially when it demands so much of your time. As I said earlier, this game is pretty much Breath of the Wild, put into an anime setting. Just playing it, you'll definitely see a lot of similarities between Breath of the Wild and this game, from the combat to the gameplay, all the way down to how the world is primarily constructed. It feels a lot like Breath of the Wild. A lot like Breath of the Wild. So much so, I'm amazed Nintendo didn't get in Hoyo's face over this, given how lawsuit and patent crazy they've been as of late. What with trying to file patents for loading screens from fast travel. But yeah, if you want huge, sprawling worlds with not much to do outside of fighting and the occasional side quest that demands you spend at least an hour on it every day to get any progress done, this is the game for you. And I gotta say, for a mobile game, it's pretty labor-intensive. I know this is just hard-coded into the game's core design, it's how the game was made, but come the hell on. Why is this game's world so big? And roughly 80% of it is just pointless running around with nothing to do. Maybe a few enemies to fight and a couple of random things to pick up here or there, but that's it. There's nothing here. And the game expects you to run across this great big stinking hunk of nothing for at least an hour every single day. And I thought Hyrule Field was bad. Okay, it's still pretty bad, but the world of Teyvat has it beat by a country mile. Even Honkai Star Rail lets you do all of your daily tasks in like a quarter of an hour, since it doesn't demand you run around this huge empty void of nothing between objectives. So really, what the hell is Genshin's excuse? Remember when I said Genshin shouldn't have tried to cram Breath of the Wild into a tiny device that can't handle a game of that scope? Well, now you know why I said that. Bigger is not always better. It takes forever to get anything done in this game, and as a result, this game really can end up eating up a lot of your free time. And as a man who wants to get out of the house and go see the real world around him, This is not a healthy practice to fall into. Anyway, let's talk about the structure of the game. So, the majority of the game has you traveling across the world of Tevat in search of your lost sibling, and the 7 Archons who rule the lands of this world. Occasionally, you interact with other characters who you can recruit as playable characters if you manage to pull them from the gacha, or from special events that don't happen often enough, in my humble opinion, and taking on tons of larger-than-life bosses. And it's here where being Hoyo's first big-budget game really starts to hurt it a little. These cutscenes with these characters were awesome 4 years ago, when this game was fresh and new, and Honkai Star Rail and ZZZ didn't exist yet. But in 2025, with all these new games out and about, and with the higher production values that Hoyo's been giving those games, Genshin's cutscenes definitely feel the weakest of the three. The characters' expressions are just so bland in this game. Like 80% of the cutscenes is just people standing around and yapping, and they don't have a good range of facial expressions. So they just end up looking like basketball mascots or mannequins or something. Like, compare these scenes to, say, Honkai, where March 7th furrows her brow if you start teasing her in a cutscene. And it's no contest. That game handled the cutscenes much better. I know it isn't fair to compare this game to Hoyo's other games, since they came out after this one, but if they can take time out of their day to give March 7th a new dress that makes her look like an ice princess, then why can't they touch up the cutscenes in Genshin a little? And don't even get me started on the English lip sync in this game. The lip movements isn't synced with the English voice acting, but rather the Japanese voice acting. So oftentimes, a character speaks, but their mouth isn't moving, or their mouth is moving, but they're not saying anything. It's honestly as bad as Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 in that regard, and Sonic Adventure 2 came out in 2001, over 20 years ago. I thought we left this awful lip sync problem behind decades ago. Why is it still a problem today? But guys, the biggest #1 complaint I have with this game, and the biggest reason I stopped playing it, is the motherfucking artifact system. I swear to God, whoever came up with this system should be arrested and charged with high treason. Trying to get a good set of artifacts in this game is bullshit. The artifact drops you get are completely randomized on every run, and because you need resin to even try and get them. And with your limited resin supply being split between artifacts, materials needed for character ascension, and materials needed for weapon ascension, which almost never cross over. So you'll likely be doing even more marathon running around the world to get what you need to level everything up. You'll often spend up to 1 hour, if not more, just trying to do all of your daily tasks in one day. A full hour of doing daily commissions from the Adventurers Guild, using up your resin, and running around the world gathering materials you can't find in dungeons, like these damn mushrooms for Kale that are in extremely limited supply, so you can't afford to miss a single one in a single day. You start to lose track of what you were doing and where you've already been, and all you can see is that next objective that just screams at you, "Take care of me right now." It drove me bonkers. Absolutely fucking bonkers. I felt like I was going insane with this grind. Again, I know Honkai Star Rail and other gacha games have these same problems, but most of those games are turn-based and don't have you running around a game world the size of Breath of the Wild. So the daily tasks in those games can be done and over with in less than a quarter hour. But Genshin just demands so much of your free time. And again, it can end up forming into very bad habits that harm your physical and mental health. I know I can't be too critical given the nature of the game, but still, didn't Hoyo see how bad this could be in testing? Oh, I'm sorry, did I ruin the review by going off on a rant about how tedious and bad habit forming the daily grind in this game can be when I was supposed to be talking about the trash artifact system? Too bad. That's the game. Now, they did eventually introduce a way to make the artifacts you want by sacrificing old 5-star artifacts you don't need. But this system sucks ass too. You can only designate 2 of the artifact's substats when you make it. One of the materials needed to make an artifact is a pain in the ass to get, and worse, you can only use it once per battle pass cycle. Once. Who in the hell thought that was a good idea? It's bad enough that this artifact system makes the grind to get a perfect gear set in Wizard 101 look like a walk in the park by comparison. But this is just awful, and it feels like a big middle finger to the audience. And again, This same system got a huge upgrade in Honkai Star Rail by removing the often month-and-a-half-long cooldown time, so I feel like Genshin should be able to do way better than this. What was Hoyo thinking? So that brings us to our conclusion. How do I feel about Genshin Impact as a whole? Frankly, I was really disappointed with this game going into mid-2024, and 2025 has done nothing to improve my opinion of it. I thought for sure this game would have stood taller once it had another year under its belt. But so far, nothing has improved or changed with this game. Apart from maybe raising the resin limit from the previous limit of 160. The soundtrack is still awesome. And I'll always have a soft spot in my heart for Amber. But unfortunately, in 2025, this is the worst gacha game I've played by a wide margin. And I've played quite a few of them. There is no question. There's a reason Chris, Dusty, and the guy all shat on it in that tier list I did last month. Compared to its competitors and even its own sister games, it's not in a good state right now. What I once thought was a kick-ass and badass game has slowly over the last year become, soulless. I can still see signs of a great product here, but it's all buried under hours of tedious, repetitive grinding in a blank open world that feels more bland than Twilight Princess's Hyrule Field, terrible story presentation that doesn't hold up, side extras that leave a lot to be desired. So much so I didn't bother covering them here because not all of them are good. And some are just a complete waste of time, and a gacha that's brutal and unfair as all hell, and dominates the entire experience. Add on the absolutely stupid daily investment one has to devote to this game to get anywhere. On top of the clunky and habit-forming method of keeping your eyes glued to the computer screen for much longer than they really should. And you have the makings for a game that does have its charm, but struggles to overcome its own problems. And frankly, Hoyoverse demanding we pay out the ass to play a game this overcooked and bloated with content nobody cares about is highway robbery. With all that said, and despite Hoyo's best efforts to try and keep this game alive, I feel this is their worst game by a wide margin. Ladies and gentlemen, I never thought I'd be saying this, but F grade. I reserve this grade for games that fail to deliver a satisfying experience due to lackluster content, incompetent management, or other such failures. I reserve this score for the worst of the worst. Those games that I feel are so bad that they should not be played unless you're deliberately looking for a rotten time. While Genshin isn't nearly as bad as some MMORPGs I've played, especially that awful Conan the Barbarian MMO, it still fits the criteria I've laid out for the F grade, in my opinion. Maybe I'd have been willing to swing for a very, very, very generous, not as bad as it could be award for this game, but Genshin Impact seals its fate with the absolutely abysmal artifact system. Especially compared to Honkai Star Rail, this system is just absolutely bullshit, and single-handedly ruined the entire experience for me. If I wasn't playing this game for a review, there's no way I could have been bothered to fire it up again. I can't imagine what it must be like to spend hundreds of dollars a month on this half-baked excuse of a shit-stained game. And once again, I must stress, I did not want to hate this game. I used to think it was cool, but over time everything came apart at the seams. And what I once thought was cool eventually became soulless. Genshin Impact to me doesn't have a soul anymore. And it's why after this video, I most likely won't be going back to it. Especially now that I have Honkai Star Rail and Reverse 1999. Both of those games share some of the same problems as Genshin, but thanks to being turn-based and cutting down on the big open world, not to mention having gacha systems that are nowhere near as bullshit as Genshin, those are games I can sink my teeth into any day, anytime, and never get frustrated with them. Especially when I pulled Firefly and Honkai Star Rail twice in a row, and then pulled her Light Cone immediately after. 3 5 stars and 3 10 pulls. Beat that, Genshin Impact. Honestly, this video was very hard to make, because I knew I'd have to dig up some very unhappy memories of the heartbreaking failure I experienced playing this thing. Again, I didn't want to hate Genshin, but it forced my hand. The soundtrack is really good, as I've said before, and I really dig a lot of the characters and how they play, but there's just too many problems to justify me playing it again. I haven't played the new region Natlin or experienced the content of that update yet, but I've seen enough wikis and playthroughs to know that it doesn't fix the game's shortcomings. It did offer some new artifact sets to go after, but no. Ha ha ha, I don't want more game. I want to stop playing it. Oh, and in case any of you were wondering why all of this footage, not counting clips from other videos, is from the beginning of the game, it's because the game corrupted my account's data, and I lost all my progress. Even though I had nothing but trash on my account, that hurt pretty bad. So I can safely say, Genshin Impact will never appear on this channel again. Sorry to the Genshin fans who wanted to see it on the channel, but it's not going to happen. Not when it's pulling bullshit like this out of left field. And now to address the elephant in the room. At the time I'm making this video, Genshin Impact and Hoyoverse got hit with a massive legal notice from the US government, more specifically the United States Regulatory Organization, demanding that Hoyo pay a fine of $20 million and immediately change the gacha system to be, quote, less predatory towards children. Legally, I understand they're in the right to do so, and I honestly hope this forces Genshin to change its gacha system for the better, considering how ass it is. But I feel like the feds are closing the fence gates months after the cows have run away. The USA has had 4 years, almost 5 years, to learn about how predatory these gacha games are and shut it down. But it's only now that these games have milked us for millions and billions of dollars that they suddenly care about these games harming our children, for reasons I've already gone over. And maybe this has been in the works for a while now, and I just never heard about it until now. But it still surprises me that this came out of nowhere without me hearing about it.
If I may throw my 2 cents into the ring, I'd just like to point out that the American government isn't forcing Hoyo to pay this fine and change their game because of angry parents having their credit card stolen just so some dumb 10-year-old can play as ka-ching. Loot boxes have been under strict gambling laws across the world for many years now, primarily thanks to Electronic Arts over there, abusing them to hell and back not so long ago. And gacha systems, like the banners in Genshin Impact, are being seen as another form of a loot box. And to be completely honest, they're right. Every time you buy Primogems and pull on a banner, you're gambling for the chance at getting a good character. It's no different than buying a loot box in the FIFA series to try and get a player you desperately want or need. It all boils down to those gambling laws that other countries don't seem to view as serious enough to warrant total transparency on what you can get. If you want another example of this, look at Wizard 101. Argue against it all you want. Those lore packs are still loot boxes at the end of the day, and as such, they fall under these same laws. This is why Wizard 101's European servers shut down not so long ago. They couldn't justify keeping them open when the game's biggest source of revenue, people buying their loot boxes, or packs if you will, was being blocked by EU law. It's the same reason Minecraft is currently facing a lawsuit. Children and underage gambling on loot boxes in online games is illegal in the EU.
I couldn't have said it better myself, EXE. Honestly, that line of thinking makes sense. The EU has strict gambling laws when it comes to children. And the US obviously wants to stay in the EU's good graces for many, many reasons. So of course, if the EU says Genshin has to change their game, the US is going to go along with it. Because if they don't, it could cause a scandal. Now, I'm not saying for sure that's why they're doing this, and there is every possibility that this section of the video is going to age like sour milk. But it is a reasonable assumption to make, especially after that lawsuit aimed at Minecraft. Children should not be allowed to gamble, in real life or on online games, and any game that facilitates the practice should seriously take a step back and think to itself, is this really worth it? Is this worth getting into a mountain of legal trouble with the powers that run these countries just to make a quick buck? Honestly, I don't think it is. If you're going to put a gacha system or loot boxes or anything that demands you throw money at the game for a random outcome into any kind of game, then you better damn well make sure that it's fair. And you better damn well make sure that the odds for what you can win are fully transparent to all parties involved. Otherwise, you will get the law book thrown at you. Microsoft and Mojang are learning that lesson the hard way as we speak, and now it's Hoyo's turn to learn that lesson. Anyway, thank you for watching this extra long video. We'll be back with more Minecraft soon enough, and maybe some Honkai Star Rail and Reverse 1999 as well. These games kick ass, and after the gachas for those games have been so kind to us, it'd be criminal to not repay their kindness by giving them some screen time on YouTube. Gotta spread the love, you know? See you guys later. Thanks for coming out.
Whew. That was one hell of a video. I can't believe Bulldozerman had such strong feelings for this game once, and his opinion fell to pieces over time due to Hoyoverse's mistakes. Oh well, I suppose that's just how the cookie crumbles. See you later, kids.